Hey there, welcome to another edition of Pro Football Now, and let's kick things off by emptying the notebook with the MMQB's Albert Breer. And Bert, let's begin in Miami. Dolphins, pretty much a mess down there in South Beach right now, dealing with struggles on the field, scoring points, and the scandal, the video from Chris Foerster off the field. What's going on in Miami?
Well, I mean, you consider all of it, too. I mean, you go back to the Ryan Tannehill injury and then Hurricane Irma. They don't have a bye week now. The first 3 weeks of this season, they go Los Angeles, New York, London. And so there's just a lot going on there, and there's been a lot going on there. And this is, I mean, this is something that's more, I think, about coaching in the NFL and more about the environment that these guys come up in and the pressure, the money, the lack of job security. All of it kind of can create this toxic mix. And I mean, look, I think the video shocked everybody, right? Like anybody who sat through that 40 seconds and it was one after the other, where you're just like, my God, you know. But the fact that, you know, a coach would, you know, an NFL coach would be mixed up in this sort of thing isn't completely off the board. The video itself, again, the video is, I think we've learned over the last 3 years, video makes everything worse. But the fact that there'd be a coach that would be mixed up in something like this isn't the most stunning thing. And, you know, hopefully he finds a way to get himself straightened out.
How much of this is a reflection on Adam Gase? This is a guy who's been known as an offensive guru. His team is struggling to put points on the board, and now he's dealing with issues on his staff.
Well, I would say, you know, this is a coach who certainly had demons, but at the same time, and then those are well known in the coaching community. At the same time, he was seen as somebody who was a very valuable assistant for young coaches to be around. You know, he worked in Washington with a very young staff under Mike Shanahan, and Sean McVay was on that staff. Kyle Shanahan was on that staff. A few years later, Kyle Shanahan gets the San Francisco job, McVay gets the Rams job, and they both wanted to hire him. You know, and so this is a guy who brought a lot to the table. And that's one of those things where you just weigh one versus the other. It's how valuable are you to an organization, and you know, and I think both cases, in a lot of these cases, what you'll see with a lot of these coaches is the value makes it worth it for a team to take on the risk. And last year, I mean, you know, in January, when the Rams came asking for permission to talk to him, the Dolphins turned around and made him one of the highest offensive paid coaches in football, more than $2 million per year, and gave him a new title, run game coordinator. That tells you a little bit about how much they thought of him after being with him for 1 year and the value he brought Gase. Unfortunately, those demons wind up outweighing everything.
All right, you speak about value. Let's talk about Adrian Peterson, a guy who was very valuable for many years to the Minnesota Vikings. He was traded on Tuesday to the Arizona Cardinals. Does a Peterson move like this? Does it even move the needle anymore after what he did in New Orleans?
In his defense, I will say he was a tough fit in New Orleans. You know, one of the problems with him in Minnesota at the end, he was very good at doing a couple things, but wasn't a well-rounded back. And when he was transcendent at those couple things, it was worth building an offense around him, worth mitigating the weaknesses because he was so special in those areas. Then once you start to take those strengths off the table, and once all of a sudden when he's not so overwhelming physically here and here, it's not worth it to make up for his weaknesses elsewhere. And by the time he was out of Minnesota, the coaches really felt like, okay, like once he got hurt, it was we can open up our offense because we can do more with Jerick McKinnon. That's who he was at the end of Minnesota. And that's why the fit in New Orleans to me was always tough, because what does Sean Payton want his backs to do? Everything. Right. I mean, you know, that's why he valued Reggie Bush at the top of the draft in 2006. That's why he went out and got Darren Sproles. That's why they took Alvin Kamara, you know, in the second round last year. They've always valued multifaceted players at all the skill positions, and in particular at running back. And so that wasn't, I don't think, the best fit for Adrian Peterson from the jump. Maybe Arizona will be, but it's certainly, I mean, over the last 2 years, we don't have a whole lot of evidence that he can really play. He'll get chances with David Johnson down for the next couple months in Arizona. That the idea for the Cardinals is, can we tread water and can we get to a point where in December we're still competing for a playoff spot when Johnson's able to get back in the lineup? All
right, let's get to injuries, and there are a lot of them to get to after Week 5, and we begin with Tom Brady up in New England. The report coming out of Boston today from Mike Giardi up there is that Brady's dealing with an AC sprain in his left shoulder. This injury kind of dates back a couple weeks, I know you're talking here, and there's a problem up there in New England. Brady's getting hit quite a bit this season.
Well, it was interesting because I'm, you know, doing the pre- and post-game show up there with Charlie Weiss. I was sitting with him during the Carolina game, and when he saw Brady get hit, he immediately said, Tommy's hurt. He immediately said it. And sure enough, a couple minutes later, we see on the TV, they're showing Brady sitting there on the bench. And I don't think a lot of people noticed this, but he was really kind of wincing in pain, and you could see him holding the shoulder. And so certainly I think there was something there. And 4 days later, he's going up against Tampa, and he's getting hit a lot in that game too. So it's not a surprise that he hurt it in the first place or that he re-aggravated it. And he's certainly being hit too much. The stat there, I think it's 16. He's taken 16 sacks in 5 games. He only took 15 sacks in 12 games last year. So the Patriots need to find a way to better protect him. That said, he's always played through stuff. In fact, he had this injury in 2011, in December and January of that year, and the Patriots got to the Super Bowl. And he played great down the stretch of that regular season. And so he's been able to manage these things in the past. The interesting thing about it is that in some of the cases that we can think of in the past, age wasn't as much of a factor.
Right.
Now he's 40 years old. So it'll be interesting to see if it limits him at all on Sunday.
Yeah, it was the running joke back then that it was Brady questionable with a sore left shoulder.
Yeah.
We're back to that again. It seems like it could be a legitimate issue. Any chance he misses any time here?
No. And he said it himself. I think he goes out there and plays against the Jets on Sunday. It's a little alarming that it's happening this early in the season because it does seem to be an accumulation of hits. And, I think with all of these one thing you want to watch, and I think that any fan can watch this, with older quarterbacks, what most of them will tell you is when they start to get to the point where they're close to the end, their clock gets messed up. And it's a result of, I hate to use the Muhammad Ali example, but kind of being punch drunk at the end of your career where you've taken so many hits that it just kind of messes with your head. And so I think with Favre and Manning, we saw it at the end, where their internal clock was messed up and they were sped up. And I'm getting rid of the ball a little too fast here. Maybe I'm bailing out of the pocket a little quicker than I would. And it just kind of messes with everything, like all of who they are as a player. And so that's the thing you want to watch with Brady now, going forward, is when we get to week 10, when we get to week 11, when we get to week 12, maybe he's dealing with more than just a shoulder injury. Maybe his ankle sprained. Maybe he's dealing with a little bit of a sore elbow, whatever it is. Do we start to see his clock get sped up? That's when you know there's trouble. But he's always been able to manage these things in the past, so you give him the benefit of the doubt for now.
All right, a couple teams were hit with multiple injuries in week 5. Let's start in Houston. They lose J.J. Watt, among others, for the season. This is a team that many felt were the favorites in the AFC South. Can they overcome the loss of Watt? And if not, who now leapfrogs them as the favorites in the division?
Well, I think one thing that is difficult about this is the way that they managed the loss of Watt last year was by getting more out of Jadeveon Clowney and because Whitney Merciless was there. What's hard this time is that you lost Merciless too. And so, that puts a little bit more on Clowney. Obviously, now offenses can focus on stopping him a little bit more. The Texans have less on their defensive front now to make other teams pay for that. And so I think the answer now isn't that you're going to be what you were defensively last year, because I think that's going to be tough. The answer is you're going to have to be more balanced. And that puts a little bit more on your rookie quarterback. So certainly I think that they're hurt by these injuries, no question about it. And the interesting thing is, we all killed the Colts, right? We all killed the Colts, and rightfully so. They got their doors blown off, just got boat raced by the Rams in the opener. They're 2-3 now. They've won two out of 3. And Jacoby Brissett's played pretty well, and if they can get through this week, if they can find a way to beat Tennessee on Monday night, then they're 3-3, and they're getting Andrew Luck back. And so it's interesting because I think that they've built some depth on that roster and they may be a little bit better in November and December than they have been the last few years, and this team that we left for dead now may be able to get through the stretch without their franchise quarterback at 500, which would be an accomplishment.
It sure would, yeah. Tread water until he comes back. All of a sudden, they may be top of the division by the time he comes back.
And Jacksonville too. No doubt about it. Jacksonville is a team right now that I think everybody should be keeping an eye on. In fact, we've been over the free agent quarterbacks for 2018. There are going to be big names out there. Drew Brees, potentially Kirk Cousins, potentially Jimmy Garoppolo. Jacksonville could wind up being a really attractive spot for a veteran quarterback down the line. They've done a great job managing things around Blake Bortles, and we shouldn't forget them because they are all alone in first place right now.
We shall see. All right, let's finish up with some news coming out Tuesday afternoon. News of Commissioner Roger Goodell sending a letter to all 32 teams in the NFL regarding the anthem and the protests, basically saying we all believe that players should stand for the national anthem. Now, he's not saying that players have to stand or required to yet, Bert. There's meetings coming up next week, the league meetings in New York. What is the commissioner doing here? Are they setting something up for?
I think they want to compromise. I mean, I think they want. I think they want to work with the players, Ryan. I mean, I think the message here is that the climate that we've been operating under for the first 6 weeks of the season, that's unsustainable. That's not good for anyone. That's not good for the people in our league office. That's not good for the players, and that's not good for our audience. And I think the message that's been sent to the players is that we have a good thing going, so let's work this out. Let's do something so we can serve the causes that we want to serve, we can respect the people that we want to respect, and we can all make a lot of money. And the thing that really kind of, the flashpoint to me was they had a 2-day meeting a couple weeks ago, and this is a pre-scheduled meeting, committee meetings that the owners do every month, and obviously the anthem thing comes up. And the biggest thing that that was kind of at hand, that was at issue there, was how do we handle the sponsors? How do we handle the advertisers? Well, that was coming out of that Trump weekend, and so the sponsors and the advertisers had reached out to them, and what they were all saying was, okay, we're all right with how you've handled it, but we want to know where it's going now. And so I think the owners at least will go into this meeting looking to find a way to create some certainty going forward, so it's not every week we're back and forth based on what the president tweets. Like every week we're not sure what's going to happen. I think they want to find a way to create some sort of certainty in the way this is going to be handled going forward.
Albert Breer, the MAQB, thanks for being with us.
You got it.
And this week on Well Actually, the guys from Pro Football Focus are talking about Chiefs quarterback Alex Smith.
I'm Steve Palazzolo.
And I'm Sam Monson. We are Pro Football Focus, and this is Well Actually.
Sam, few people saw Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Alex Smith as a Super Bowl caliber winning quarterback, and even you wrote about that last year, that they could not win with Alex Smith. But 2017 is a bit of a different story, and well, actually, he could lead the Chiefs to a Super Bowl this season.
Yeah, thankfully that article wrote about how you couldn't win a Super Bowl with the 2016 version of Alex Smith, but the 2017 version of Alex Smith, I think, is a totally different player. He has changed the way he plays the game, and I think the 2017 version is a very viable Super Bowl winning caliber quarterback. He's always been a good quarterback, but he's had this fatal flaw, a pathological conservative streak to his game that left him unable to attack defenses deep down the field, to really go after them aggressively. And it's been the cap on his play. It's been what's held him back all these years from being a great quarterback. But now we're seeing him remove that reticence as a completely different guy. And you're seeing it in how he's playing. The deep ball is there more this year. He's was 31st a year ago in terms of how often he goes deep down the field. This season, he's up at 16th. Deep ball accuracy, first this year. Passer rating going deep, first this year. Both those numbers were in the 20s a season ago.
And he's still taking care of the ball.
Yeah.
So he's always been a guy that doesn't throw a lot of interceptions, is always really good at our turnover-worthy play stat, taking care of the football. Always a top 3 guy year over year, and he is once again. So he's going down the field, but still taking care of the ball, 0 interceptions so far.
Yeah, and when you combine those two things together, being more aggressive with all the good things that he always did, you suddenly have a much better grading quarterback. He's the number 3 graded quarterback through the first 5 weeks of the season. Before, he's never had a grade higher than 10th. He's never had a passing grade in the top 10. This is a different guy this season.
So look, when I look at Alex Smith's career, there's always a handful of games that stick out, whether it's 2011 when he was with the 49ers making big throws against the Saints in the playoffs, 2013 with the Chiefs against the Colts in a shootout making big plays in the playoffs. He went head-to-head with Peyton Manning a couple times where he showed that he can make these big plays. I just wonder, how did they get this aggressive nature out of him? He showed it before, just didn't do it week to week. Is it just because they drafted a polar opposite quarterback in the first round this past year? Patrick Mahomes out of Texas Tech, the gunslinger, the aggressive downfield thrower, questionable decisions at times. They have brought some of the best out of Alex Smith and made him just aggressive enough to take his game to the next level.
Yeah, and it's a mix of things because they're scheming some better chances for him as well. With Kareem Hunt in the backfield, with Tyreek Hill out wide. We saw in that first week of the season, he went deep a couple of times, but they were wide open touchdowns to guys without a defender in the same zip code. Alex Smith has always been willing to pull the trigger on those plays. It's the ones that are less definitive that he's always struggled to actually let go of his hand. And we're seeing more of that this year. He's taking chances when he reads correctly that he has a favorable matchup out wide. He sees one-on-one on the edge, he's going to put the ball in the air in a way he hasn't done in the past. So you combine the scheme, getting him some nice looks, and Alex Smith just being more aggressive with the ball, and you have this transformed player.
With that aggressiveness, plus the great scheming that Kansas City has done from the run game to some of the college-y type of concepts with the shovel passes and getting him out of the pocket, there is a lot to like about this Chiefs offense, and Smith is running it to perfection.
All right, thanks, guys. Time now for Scott Spotlight as we welcome in former Redskins and Niners general manager Scott McCloughan. And Scott, let's start this week with defense. The Jaguars are fresh off a dominating performance against the Steelers, a game in which they actually intercepted Ben Roethlisberger 5 times. What's been the key to Jacksonville's success on the defensive side of the ball so far?
You know what? It's unique. I think kind of where it started was I was with Gus Bradley when I was in Seattle, and he was our D coordinator before he became the head coach in Jacksonville. And I think he brought the mentality, the demeanor, the toughness, the understand it's a team. You know, it's 11 guys flying the ball, making plays, getting turnovers. And, you know, and they've had, you know, not knocking them, but they've had quite a few first picks, you know, or early picks on the draft side or the defensive side, I'm sorry. And, I think it's come to fruition. It's you know, it's important to have players. It's important to have the right philosophy. And the last 2 weeks, they've been lights out. I mean, it's impressive what they're doing from the turnover standpoint, from the sack standpoint, and just playing tough run defense.
Okay, Scott, on the flip side, there's a team out there we all thought would be Super Bowl contenders. They're now 2-3. We're talking about the Raiders. They've dropped 3 straight games. What's been the underlying issue for Oakland over this 3-game stretch?
You know what? It's interesting because last year they were really good up front on the offensive line. You know, big bodies, get movement, could run the ball and do all that. And, of course, you know, not having the quarterback healthy right now affects them. But still, he wasn't off to the start I thought he'd have compared to how before he got hurt last year and finishing the way he did. But I think it's a combination of things. You know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So you hate to really count them out right now. But, you know, the secondary struggles. They've had some injuries. You know, linebackers, not a lot of speed. You know, but you thought the offense would carry them, and it's not happening right now.
All right, Scott, since we're talking quarterbacks here, another week, another quarterback for the Cleveland Browns as Jackson benched rookie Deshaun Kaiser at halftime of the team's loss to the Jets. What have you seen so far from Kaiser, and has he shown you anything that says he's ready to be a starting QB in the NFL?
You know what? I think he came out early. You know, when you have a head coach in college that says the same thing, he's not ready yet. It's tough, you know. And the thing that, you know, I hate to see is a young quarterback, you know, that gets thrust into the starting role and then gets benched. You know, it's a confidence thing. It's a battle every day, every week for the quarterback. Especially when you're a rookie, these defenses throw so much stuff at you that it's hard to be able to comprehend everything that's going on, and then also get the ball off on time, you know, get out of the huddle on time, all that stuff. And it's a circus. But if you're a team that you know is not really going well, you know, and unless he just getting beat up because the O-line's so bad or whatever, let him play, let him go through the struggles, let him learn, you know, and that's. I hate to see it, and I hope, you know, at some point this year, which I'm sure will happen, he gets back in there and has some success, because I love seeing young quarterbacks that get through adversity and go out and have success.
Well, Scott, sometimes you hear about coaches pulling quarterbacks for their own good. Do you think it's possible if a guy's playing too early at that position where you can do permanent damage by leaving him out there?
You can if he's getting beat up, you know, offensively. The old line's not blocking. You know, I remember David Carr, you know, in Houston. I mean, he was setting records in his first couple of years with sacks. And what happens is not so much a physical attack to your, you know, physically, but it's the fact that you start losing your mechanics. You start throwing off your back foot. You start getting the ball out quicker than you should, just because you get tired of getting hit, you know. And if you don't have a run game that can help the young quarterback out, it's a battle. And, you know, I've talked to a lot of defensive players over my career, and they love young quarterbacks because they'll show them one thing, switch to something else right away. and the quarterback can't understand what's going on because he hasn't seen it on tape yet. So it's almost like a bloodbath out there for the young guys, and that's why if you're going to put a guy in, because my first year in San Fran, we took Alex. Our plan was not to play him at all in 05, at all. But we had so many injuries, we had to, and it wasn't pretty, But he learned from it and he kept going forward. But still, it's tough because you hate to, at any position, but especially a quarterback, you hate a young guy's confidence to get hurt. Start questioning themselves, start questioning mechanics, all that.
Okay, so you mentioned Alex. We're 5 weeks into the season now. There's one undefeated team left. That's the Kansas City Chiefs. Alex is there, the quarterback you drafted, the GM who built that team, John Dorsey. Obviously, he's gone now, but he's a guy you worked with. The head coach, Andy Reid. He's somebody that you also worked with there in Green Bay. And I know records don't always paint the whole picture, but why should Kansas City be considered the best team in the NFL right now?
Because the most consistent. Think about it. Alex is playing probably his best ball he's ever played. He's had quality years the last 4 or 5, but he's playing the best. They have a really good running game. They have a really good tight end. They got speed on the outside. They got a defense that can rush the passer, and also in the secondary can play man coverage. It's all like it's like a perfect storm for them coming together because they're talented. And John Dorsey and Andy Reid have done a great job there. And, there's a reason why they're undefeated. It's not like it's easy to do. I see them being a legit contender going forward.
Scott, how long could Kareem Hunt keep this up? We've seen young running backs come into the league, get off to a hot start, and then kind of flame out a little bit as the grind of the season gets going here. Do you expect Hunt to keep up the pace he's on right now?
The thing that's good about him physically is he's a bigger body guy, so he can take the physical contact. He's got strength throughout his body, his lower body especially, and his hips and his legs. But it's tough. It's really tough being a rookie and going from playing, 12 to 13 games if you're in, post game or all-star game, whatever. But if you're playing 16 and then you throw in the playoffs, that's a long season, and these guys aren't used to it. But he's built with power and speed, and what he's done so far is incredible. If he can keep doing it, he's one of the best backs in the league.
See if they can move to 6-0 this week. Scott McCloughan, thanks for being with us this week.
Thank you, fellas.
All right, now it's time to take a trip to the executive suite. Fantasy football week 6 is upon us. Here to get you ready is the fantasy executive, Corey Parson.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Welcome to the Executive Suite. I'm Corey Parson, the Fantasy Executive, with your PFN Fantasy Football update for week number 6. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense has yet to hit on all cylinders this season, but the return of Doug Martin could signal better days for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. In his 2017 debut, Martin carried the ball 13 times for 74 yards and a touchdown, but more impressive was Martin's 5.8 yards per carry going up against the 8-man box. As Jameis Winston gets more comfortable with his pass catches, you should see less 8-man fronts for Martin to go up against. Martin can contribute as a receiver out of the backfield. Look for him to catch 30 to 35 passes this season. Colts rookie running back Marlon Mack was great in week 5, rushing 9 times for 91 yards and a touchdown. Mack may not get a ton of touches, but he's an electric playmaker who gains yards in bunches. Frank Gore will continue to be the lead back in the backfield, but as the Colts offense improve, look for Mack to be a viable RB3 option through the bye weeks. Tight ends have been very inconsistent this season. Instead of relying on underperformers like Eric Ebron and Coby Fleener, fantasy owners should look to stream tight ends versus the New York Giants and the Cleveland Browns. In PPR formats, tight ends are averaging over 20 points per game versus the Browns and the Giants units. Up next for these struggling teams are Ryan Griffin for the Houston Texans and A.J. Derby for the Denver Broncos. Expect both players to hit pay dirt in week 6, and both are likely on your waiver wire. Our symmetric rising star for week 6 is New York Jet tight end Austin Seferian-Jenkins. Upon returning from suspension, ASJ has been tight end 9 in PPR formats. He has 15 receptions on 18 targets so far this season. New York Jet quarterback Josh McCown loves to throw the football to the tight end. Seferian-Jenkins is on the field for close to 80% of the Jets' offensive snaps, and he's currently getting 12% of the targets in the passing game. That's only second to Bilal Powell, who's currently injured. From the Executive Suite, I'm Corey Parson, the Fantasy Executive.
Thanks, Corey. This is last call, and for years now, spread offense has been a loaded term in NFL circles, and that's fair. It's gotten harder to assess offensive linemen and tight ends and quarterbacks as they come into the pros, because what all those guys are being asked to do in college isn't the same as what they'll be taught to do in the league, or at least it hasn't been. Now times are changing, and that is a result of what's always happened in football. Scheme trickles up and not down. College coaches can't control what high school coaches are doing, and pro coaches can't control what college coaches are doing. So the smart ones adapt. High schools are going 4 wide, running option out of it. Well, then colleges will implement similar looks so they can get their young players on the field faster and playing more effectively. And the same idea applies to how NFL coaches, at least the forward-thinking ones, run their operations. If you want proof, I'll give you 3 of the top 5 offenses in the NFL. The Patriots, the Chiefs, and the Rams have all incorporated spread elements into what they do. And why? Because not only is it sound, it's helping their players. In LA, what Sean McVay has done smoothed out Jared Goff's transition to the pro game, which was rocky in 2016 to say the least. In Kansas City, it's allowed the Chiefs to get a little more out of Alex Smith's athleticism by making him, in certain spots, the spread quarterback he was all the way back at Utah. And in New England, Chip Kelly's influence in using shorter verbiage and pace has long made Tom Brady and company even more dangerous. Plus, in each of these cases, spread sets have weaponized the versatility of skill guys like Tavon Austin, Tyreek Hill, and James White. Now, it did take a while to get here. I wrote back in the SI NFL preview about the rise and fall of the read option offense and what it meant for dual threat quarterbacks like Robert Griffin, Colin Kaepernick, and Tim Tebow. But the conclusion of that story wasn't that the spread is dead in the NFL. It was that its concepts have settled into the league's lexicon. There's proof all over the NFL that it's found its place. That doesn't mean that quarterbacks don't have to win from the pocket. They absolutely do. And that's been the difference between the ones who've made it and who haven't, coming from those college systems. It also doesn't mean you can just run your quarterback into the defense 15 times a game and expect him to stay healthy. We've seen that doesn't work. What it does mean is that the idea that spread concepts wouldn't work was always wrong. And they've proven to be powerful supplements to what NFL coaches are already doing. A few weeks ago, I was talking to McVay about all this, and one thing he said stuck out about how he's built his offense. Everything we do has the quarterback in mind first, because I think it's the most difficult position. So you want to make it as easy as possible for those guys. He then added, ultimately, it's about the players feeling good, not me. I got plays that I like, but I don't ever want to run plays that our players aren't comfortable executing. And sometimes those things are simply what players have been doing, which of late is a lot more of what you're actually seeing from the best offenses in the league.